with that, it's time to move on to the discussion section. This discussion section is brought to you by nobody. We still have no sponsors. But if you'd like to be a sponsor for the Full Dive Gaming Podcast, please reach out to reach out to me. My name is Rip. Rip McAfee at fulldivepodcast.com. Again, check the show notes for all of that yummy information. All right, for this discussion section, we're going to be talking about VR gaming literacy, which is kind of like it's an interesting topic. Adam, I'm going to go ahead and put the pressure on you mostly because you brought it up for us.
Sure. This is an idea that I've been having and came up recently when I've been trying to teach. I tried to teach some of my siblings how to play Onward, and it did not go well. But there's this idea of VR game of game literacy where games build on each other over time. And so the very first game that used the twin stick shooting or a platformer had to teach you everything about twin stick shooting or platforming. And then other games kind of built on that. You already knew how to do a twin stick shooter, so it's okay to maybe not teach you how to move around and aim. People kind of got the feel of it. And I felt the same thing for Onward. I've played a lot of Pavlov, I've played a lot of other VR shooters. And so when I picked up Onward, it felt pretty seamless. I tried to throw my sibling into Onward, who only has very limited experience in VR, and he couldn't do anything.
Huh.
Yeah.
Did you take him through the training thing?
What was that?
Did you take him through the training segment?
He did, and he just had a really hard time with it. There's a lot of intuitive things in VR shooters that VR shooters in particular in the VR genre have been around probably the longest, and I think have suffered from this additive build on each other the longest. And it's one of those things where Onward is not a game for beginners, I feel. And you maybe have to have some other experiences in VR to build up your VR game literacy and your skill set enough to the point where you can play something like Onward. I'm curious to see if you guys have similar experiences with that, or what would the best VR games for beginners would be.
That's this whole concept is huge in all of gaming, but it's terrible in VR, not only because it's a whole new platform. Developers are still trying to figure out the controls. They're still trying to figure out, okay, how do we redo inventory management now? So, and not only that, but then you got the PlayStation VR that has no joysticks. You got the original Vive controller that has no joysticks. And then you've got Rift controllers and Valve controllers that actually have joysticks. So now you've got them confused as to what's the way I move. And it is just terrible. One game, even a really simple game that should be really user-friendly, we talked about a bit, Box VR. So I finally went back and played it to see what it was all about, because when I let Nat play it, she was struggling to get through the menus. And you guys who have played a lot of VR had no problem finding your way through. I got in and I saw what she meant. I was used to playing VR, so it was kind of easier to navigate, but it wasn't very clear, because like they have this big grid menu in front of you. You basically see 16 blocks in front of you, but like the top 3 blocks are workouts on the right, and then the left block is only saying what those workouts are. It's not very clearly marked out. These aren't well color coded, and yet it's like they were thinking, oh well, people have probably already played a lot of Beat Saber and stuff, they'll kind of be able to navigate these menus better. Well, if you put someone who's never played VR into Box VR, it's not going to be good for them. And I know that because I was considering buying it for my dad, because he's been playing a lot of Beat Saber on his Quest. He's never gamed in his life. And I was like, ooh, maybe Box VR would be a good exercise for him because he wants some exercise. I was like, I'm going to go play it and see if I think there's no way he'd be able to find his way around in Box VR at first. I think he needs to play several other VR games first, because they're expecting you to know how to navigate a VR menu. They're expecting you to know what this grid means and what it looks like. And it's just not the case for someone that's new to VR.
Mm-hmm. So, Destiny, you hopped straight into Pavlov, which is not all that like friendlier than Onward in terms of like controls and everything. How was that?
It was rough. Because like as far as beginners go, like I said, I didn't have my headset very long before I first got into Pavlov, so I definitely should have gotten a little bit more used to controls and how they were working. But especially for Pavlov, I do not know how I missed it. Maybe it's because I went straight to the online feature. But like there is a tutorial, And but like I said, somehow completely skipped that. Just literally jumped right in and landed in the middle
Oh
of the
no.
map, and it was rough. And luckily, there was a very nice guy who walked by and was about to shoot me, but I was like, "No, just I don't know what to do. Help me, please." So it was like, "Okay." And so this poor guy. Oh, I felt so bad for him. And then he's even talked on his walkie-talkie to like the other teammates. He's like, "I'm trying to help this person." And I swear it felt for like a good 5 minutes. We're just sitting there, like basically doing the tutorial in the map. And even then, like having somebody walk me through the controls, because I think once you've played it and like what you're saying, once you're used to it, you kind of like it's already there, like you don't have to think about it like, oh, I'm pushing B for this or A for that. So I noticed even they had to be like, wait, let me see what I'm pushing to do that. And so yeah, it can get a little bit complicated. There's definitely, I think, like stepping stones involved,
Mhm.
and as far as the different games and levels, but FPS games, they're a little bit tricky.
Yeah. And I
Yeah, to
could
make
see why,
this even
especially
more
even
kind of
once you've gotten.
relatable. Well, for
Sorry.
people who haven't played VR, and when they're trying to explain it to you, you look down in VR, you see your virtual hands. You don't see a controller like if you're playing an Xbox. So if someone tells me press X, I look down and I see two hands. I literally have to
Right.
pull my headset away from my face to even figure out what button X is. So it's not
Yes.
nearly as easy to explain to someone who's playing on a console or something.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or when you say trigger, like, at least on the Quest ones, trigger could be 4 different buttons, for both hands.
Mhm. Hmm.
So
Oh, no,
it's
my
oh,
beer.
you are?
I think this is something that's built into the gaming world for a long time. And it's something developers have forgotten to consider. Because I think even us on this podcast, we've run into a lot of this. Like when I went into that MMO with you guys, and I'd never really played MMOs, I had no idea what was going on. Or like
Mhm.
there were all these classes, and I didn't even really know. I was like, okay, I've heard of this kind of gaming. I know what classes kind of mean. But for someone who had never played MMO, they would have had no idea what they were doing. And even in War
Oh
Dust,
yeah.
you guys kind of instinctively knew aim your gun at the ground and you're gonna run. I couldn't figure out why I would sometimes run and sometimes not. When I had to aim my
See,
gun
that
barrel
was
at the
new
ground.
for
Like
me.
there's so much
Yeah.
of this that developers and gamers all get so used to doing it that we aren't considering how we're kind of alienating people who are brand new to the medium that are going to struggle their way through figuring out, or they're just going to give up and not try. That's why
But
Beat Saber, we
Mhm.
keep praising it, we keep talking about it. It's like the ultimate VR game because you can literally hand it to anyone and they can figure it out almost instantly.
Oh
Is
yeah.
there any other VR game like that we know of?
Oculus First Contact. That's why I
No,
always show it to everyone.
it's there to
Google
teach
Earth,
you.
Google Earth
Right.
Yeah.
VR is pretty good.
Google Earth. Yeah. And that's why it's often good to have in your sort of VR repertoire. When you're showing new people VR, don't like hop them into your favorite game off the bat. They're probably going to struggle. Have some easier games that you're totally bored with by now. But, for new people to VR, the VR part itself, don't worry, they'll be excited. It'll be crazy for them. But they're not gonna know the controls. Like when I, it's why I like introducing people to like Oculus First Contact because it the only buttons you need to worry about are grip and maybe controller or maybe trigger. But I just tell them like interact with the world like you would in real life. If you want to grab something, just grab the controller, and they kind of figure it out from there. But yeah, for like games like Onward or Pavlov or um, I mean the War Dust is so janky. It's like expecting like detailed tutorial from them might be a bit much. But if you've got the budget to put a tutorial in, maybe consider having some hints. If you've ever played games like Call of Duty or Battlefield, they have a lot of like smart hints. So, for example, if someone empties their gun and they need to reload and don't reload for like 5 seconds or so, you'll get a little thing that says X to reload, which is super useful if you're like new to VR and you're like fumbling with the buttons. Like, how in the world do I reload again? They showed me like 20 minutes ago and I don't remember. Then, little press in this controller, it's A. Press A to drop the magazine. And like, it may, don't show the hint every time because then people who are VR literate will be like, this is annoying as heck. But yeah, it's hints, tutorials, developers, you gotta include these things. Not everyone has played every VR game under the sun. They haven't played your VR game as many times as you have. You gotta include this stuff. People don't always know it.
And maybe if they
Arizona
look directly at their
Sunshine's like
hands,
that.
make the controllers kind of show up in a faded image to where they can see the buttons and
Yes.
sticks. That's a huge
Yeah.
help in games.
Yeah,
Yes,
and that is
yeah, I've
actually
noticed
why I
that.
think Google Earth does it the best, because your controllers, your actual controllers show up on screen with with
Yep.
little arrows that say what each of the buttons do, and that is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I will say it took us forever to figure out how to correctly do Street View in Google Earth VR
Oh.
because they didn't really show you that all that well, especially in terms of like there was no real they didn't tell you how their Street View functioned, where you'd think it would be like sort of where you're pointing or something, but no, you have to be directly over where you want to do the Street View, which is kind of hard to get a sense of when you're like flying like so many hundreds of feet in the air. But yeah, tutorials, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we're now at roughly an hour and 10 minutes, according to my little timer here. Probably a little bit shorter because we took a little bit to get started. But with that, we're going to end this podcast. Oh, my hands. Thank you. We're going to end this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I guess everyone's too late now. We had a giveaway last week. Sorry for those that are just now coming across the podcast. We don't intend to have another giveaway particularly soon. It's not a regular reward we intend to hand out, but maybe at a certain milestone for the YouTube channel or something, we'll have another giveaway. But in the meantime, you can join the Discord channel. We got all sorts of awesome stuff happening there all the time. You can join the Q&A sessions. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, again, this is all being recorded in a VR game. We can see each other in real life. Go check out the YouTube channel and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. It's pretty cool. And I think that's it, guys.
Yay.
See you next week.
Bye.
Right.
See you, everyone.